tell you a story. When I was younger, my Uncle Deji came over for an extended visit. Every night he told me a story called The Never Ending Story. Have any of you guys heard of it? Well, in case you haven't, it's actually more commonly referred to as The Arabian Nights or 1001 Nights, which includes the story of Aladdin, in case you didn't know. Yeah, so in this story, there's a king and he marries a different woman every day. But ultimately, he kills them every day because he's unsatisfied with them. For what reason, I don't know. One day, though, he marries this one woman who tells him a story every night. But she ends the story on a cliffhanger. And so the king, of course, he doesn't kill her because he wants to hear how the story will end. And he lets her live on to the next day. The next day again, she tells him the rest of the story. But she ends it again on a cliffhanger. And she does this continuously for days and days and days, and manages to avoid getting killed by the king. And thus she lives happily ever after. In this example, we see the ingenuity and importance of fiction and storytelling. See, the story of 1001 Nights is actually many different stories compiled by many different cultures, told in many different time periods in history. Historically, though, these were folklore stories, and they were important for transmitting social values and norms in communities. And they also served as a way of forging social connections between people through retelling these stories. Now, interestingly though, these stories were always fictional. The people who told these stories had rich imaginations and took inspiration from life all around them. They were abstract pieces of their imagination that were formed into tangible storylines. Now, why is the demand for storytelling and fiction so much higher now than it ever has been historically? We see this in the massive popularity of TV, books, movies, and video games. Things like Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, Disney and Marvel movies, as well as many other forms of entertainment I'm sure you guys are all aware of. These forms of entertainment are all really popular. There's been a constant influx of these TVs and movies and video games. We are able to access them 24/7, 365 days, and personally, I think this is amazing. Fiction allows us to engage emotionally with many different stories, which helps us to build empathy. Also, fiction also allows us to read into the perspectives of other people, which expands our knowledge and understanding of the greater world around us. Fiction and storytelling, though, can also be a way of forging social connections between people, whether it is through the shared love of a particular book, movie, or series, or it is through the discussions and debates that arise from different interpretations of fictional book, movie, or series. Fiction can be a way of helping us forge relationships. However, though, there seems to be a recent obsession with fiction. Society is addicted to entertainment. Like I said earlier, we see this through the rise of technology. We are able to constantly access technology and thus able to constantly access entertainment. At a moment's whim, easily accessible from our personal devices, we can become immersed in the world of fiction and storytelling. Now, it is important that we break out of this mold, that we live to tell our own stories. However, though, there's a few justifiable reasons for why people choose to become immersed in fiction and storytelling. A lot of people would rather live in their various favorite fictional worlds rather than live in the disheartening reality that today's worlds seem to be. However, it is important that we take the initiative to take ourselves out of fictional worlds and immerse ourselves back into our own lives. In a sense, we are like the story of 1001 Nights. Now, what I mean by this is that while we might not necessarily be in danger of dying every day, but rather, our personal stories are akin to the stories that the woman in the story told every day. Each day is a new story, and the next day is simply a continuation of the last story. So, it is important, guys. Get out there and live your story. Thank you.